my guest today is Gordon. We've had a bit of a dilemma because I've had to use different headphones and I look like Minnie Mouse, but never mind. So do you want to introduce yourself before I start bombarding you with my questions?
Yes, my name is Gordon Doudie. Everyone knows me as Gordy. I currently work for the City of Doncaster Council as an independent domestic violence advocate. Prior to that, I served just under 28 years as a police officer in various forces throughout the UK, with predominant specialism in domestic abuse.
Oh, it's lovely to catch up with you again.
Same here, mate.
So me and Gordy already know each other, don't we?
We do, mate, we do.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you my first question.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So, what were the main reasons why you decided to leave the police and move into work as an IDVA?
Well, I was coming to the end of my time in the police. I'd done just under 28 years as a cop. I got to that age where you could either retire at 55 or do the 30 years. But at that point, I'd had enough of the police. Things weren't going particularly great for me at that time. So I went out, took a few months off to see where I wanted to go. I knew that I'd always wanted to be within the domestic abuse field because it's something that I've cared so much about over the last 30 years. And then I initially went into work in the control room at the North Yorkshire Police. Didn't like that because I was arguing with the inspectors all the time in terms of why we weren't sending jobs, etc., compared to when I was a cop. And then I'd obviously worked with IDVAs before in my previous role in the police, and I knew the manager, I knew the line manager, I knew a lot of people that the IDVAs at Doncaster Council already, because obviously I used to liaise them closely with them when I was investigating crimes and stuff for the police. So the job came up, I applied for it, and I'm glad to say I got it, and I cannot be any more happier. It is I think the next succession for me to go into what I've done. I'm now working with victims now rather than actually dealing with perpetrators. But I think having my police background and knowledge of domestic abuse, it's helping in terms of providing a better service, because I think a lot of IDVAs, some have got police background, some haven't. So consequently, I'm kind of being lent on in terms of, can they do that? Can they do this? And I'm actually putting a training package together for IDVAs to basically tell them what the police should be doing. So at least they know if when they speak to their victims, they can tell them what they're supposed to do. Because not all what they should be doing is happening.
Yeah, but how can we make them do it? That's the thing.
I think the thing for me is education, because I think when I would say things have got a lot better in terms of dealing with perpetrators with the courts, and different, obviously, legislation has been brought in. But I personally think we've gone a bit backward in terms of their attitude towards domestic abuse, because I know most forces have said it's their number one priority or one of their main priorities. But I've seen it from both the police perspective and also now as an IDVA that there's a lot of discrepancies, and there's some good cops and some good people who are passionate, and there's some who are clearly not. And I think for me, they don't spend enough time dealing with domestic abuse in terms of when they're doing the initial training, because I remember when I did training, I did probably 30, 40 statements that were actually inspected by serving officers, training officers, and they would they'd tell me where I'd gone wrong, what I should put in, that kind of thing. And prior to me leaving the police, I actually spent a bit of time in training, because I thought that was going to be my last stint in the police if I could become a trainer. So I got a job last 2 years before I was due to leave. So I thought, brilliant, I can finish my time as a trainer and obviously pass my experience on. But the thing I found is that the training programs that were in place were not realistic. They weren't in terms of preparing officers for the streets, because a lot of the feeling was to bombard them with knowledge, but no actual practical experience on how to deal with it. So consequently, they put a lot of pressure on the tutors on the shift to implement that knowledge into actual action. So you find a lot of the recruits were absolutely, in terms of were bricking it. And I always remember speaking to one student officer who I taught when I was there, and she went to violent domestic, which really shook her. She didn't expect what to expect. And I think from my point of view is that when I was there, I tried to explain that domestic abuse is probably one of the most things that you will attend as a cop. And I kind of rationalised that by saying I've got the active queue list up of all the incidents that have not been attended. And over 50 to 60% are all domestic abuse related. So that is the bread and butter of the police role. Yes, you've got your burglars in progress, which are exciting. You've got the car chases, which are exciting. But ultimately, the domestic abuse is the most thing that a cop will attend. Usually my first incident was a domestic abuse incident as a cop, and it's carried on that all the way through. It's just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think the issue is that basically we're not recognising it early enough, and sometimes when cops go to jobs and try to deal with it, they're getting hounded by the radio to come and go to another job. And I think that's why when I was a tutor, because I was a tutor for 20 odd year, is that I was used to say to my student officers that this is your bread and butter. You do a good job here, then you can go home at night. If you don't, then you'll always be wondering what happened. What if I didn't do this? What if I didn't do that? Because we all know that the amount of murders in this country are mostly domestic abuse related. And I think it's important we pass that knowledge on. So me personally, I think we need to grip it from the beginning. So when people join the job, they know that the majority of their time and response will be dealing with domestics. So why not give them the tools in which to deal with it? So half the stuff that I've spoken about to other officers, they haven't even heard of, like DVPNs and that kind of thing. Never heard of them. So why are we not giving them the tools prior to coming out onto the streets? And then obviously they can.
Well, that's right, but this is where it's all going wrong, because you can say that right across the board.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same with social workers. They're not trained on it properly. No. Solicitors, judges, they're not trained on it properly.
No.
I've been building myself and Claire Throssell.
Yeah.
I've been building our accredited training package to deliver to law firms, because how can they deal with victim survivors if they don't know what they're doing?
Exactly.
It's like, and they are publicising themselves and promoting themselves as family law specialists. Now, considering 90% of their caseload is domestic abuse.
Yeah.
How can they not have that basic education? Exactly. They're not trauma informed.
No.
They've got no patience with them. And it's like, I deal with it all the time. I've got a case at minute, and it's just like, honestly, you can just see it unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could write it, couldn't you? You could
definitely.
write it. You can see exactly how it's going to roll.
Yeah.
And ultimately, a lot of that does start with police.
Yeah.
A lot of it could be nipped in bud.
Yeah.
If the reports were done properly.
Yeah.
We keep focusing on how bad family courts are, but ultimately the judge only sees what is on that report that's in front of them, and if that report's not correct, then they're not making right judgment.
No.
And education is a massive key to it all.
Yeah.
Which is where they need to be putting money.
Yeah.
Need to be putting funding on the right training.
Yeah.
Because it's just the coercive control side of it as well. They just do not get that at all, and they don't realise it's the coercive control that and then escalates.
Yeah.
So when is your training package going to be ready?
Well, I've done it now. I've got it ready. So I've got a training session booked for the next time we have a full team meeting next month. So I'll be issuing it then. So my plan is, once I've done that, and then I'm going to do one with the police in terms of what the IDVAs are supposed to do, because there seems to be some sort of confusion between the police and the IDVAs, what we're supposed to be doing as IDVAs. A lot of them seem as an extension of the police in terms of they should be taking statements or like a victim personal statement. That shouldn't be our role, because it's purely because they're cops, they take the statements. In terms of the criminal injury side of things as well, you're getting clients asking us, what do I do? Well, that's not how the officer's supposed to talk them through that and guide them through that. So it's again a bit of a learning curve for both sides, because ultimately, like I say, the IDVAs who I've been with now for almost 18 months now, some have got police backgrounds, some haven't. But they've brought experience to the table in terms of how, when they've interacted with the police. Some have been good, some have been really good, but some have been really bad as well. And I think it's trying to increase the number of the good to the really bad, because it seems to be there's an offset balance at the minute. And I think the key thing for us is that the biggest impact on our system or our support and our way of doing things is a time at trial, time at court. how many times we're going to court. It's been adjourned for another 2 years, 3 years, and it's so hard to try and keep that victim on board to say, look, you stood by so far, but I know it's been 3 years. I know the year's another year, but we're going to lose them. There's no doubt about it, because it's so sad when you see him break down and crying.
But then you know what's going to happen when rates start going down, don't you?
Yeah.
It'll be, oh, look, it's amazing. These rates have gone down. We said we could have half VOG in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Really? Well, they're going down because, A, victims more often than not don't even bother reporting further incidents because they think, what's the point? And then B, we what the face we after. And this is my bugbear. We've got organisations encouraging them to come and speak out, and they're going to be kept safe, protected, and everything else. And that is the complete polar opposite to reality of what is actually happening to them.
Yeah.
And can you blame them that they've had enough and they can't face that?
No. I mean, because one of my colleagues went to court the other day, and she was told that was a fixed trial. She went, been told it was now going to be adjourned, and it's going to be for another year, but as a floater. And obviously, it means by a floater, it doesn't mean it's going to go ahead. So that's been going on for like 3.5 years. And the last was, bless her, she was distraught, because at the end of the day, it's been going on for so long. She's not getting the justice that she wants.
Yeah.
I just think we got told at the very beginning from the government that due to the backlog that COVID caused, that the courts would stay up until 10 o'clock at night to deal with this backlog. Where's that? Why has that not happened? Because it's okay, some people arguing about it, or in terms of the unions and stuff from the barristers and stuff like that, and the judges, but at the centre of it all is a victim of this kind of domestic abuse, and they seem to be given basically bypassed for their own personal preferences as to how they feel. It's not victim focused at all.
But what my thing is, I don't understand why they can't do the majority of the hearings online, remote, because they did it all the way through COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, that is just less stress on the victim.
Yeah.
It's gonna reduce. It's just gonna stop that overload of court cases. Yeah. I mean, they're queuing up sometimes outside family courts to get in.
Yeah.
And it's okay saying we've got special measures in place. Some courts have got 2 exits and entrances, some haven't.
Yeah.
So you're all right, but you're going in there, and while you're being searched, perpetrators also entering building.
Yeah.
What's all that about?
Yeah.
And then it's okay having a screen up in courtroom.
Yeah.
But what happens after when they're both going out at the same time?
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. I get that they have to have in-person, face-to-face hearings, but not all of them. Majority of them hearings could be remote.
Yeah. I mean, they do it now in terms of the civil courts, like family courts as well, in terms of non-mols and punitive steps orders. The last few I've been doing, the last 6 months, have all been remote. They've all been from the home of the victim.
Yeah, well, you can if they're requested. If you request, can we have this remote, and you get permission from judge, and they ain't got a problem with that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes they're still making them go into court.
Yeah.
I've had a woman today reach out to me from Manchester, and I've asked her which area. Has she got any IDVAs in her area that can support her, because she wants to do a right to review?
Yeah.
Because they've NFA'd stalking, harassment and assault.
Yeah.
And she's asking me who can she get to help her? And I said, have you got an IDVA? And she said to me, what's an IDVA?
Wow.
So, yeah. So can you explain that to anybody that's listening that doesn't actually know? I mean, we live and breathe it, so we assume that everybody knows this basic stuff, but they don't. They don't. It's like, well, I've just said NFA'd, which means no further action.
Yeah.
So, if you could explain what an IDVA's role is and define it from a police officer's role.
Yeah. In terms of the IDVA then, they're completely independent because, as it says in the title, independent. They're not associated with the police or the council, so they act as an independent source of comfort for a victim of domestic abuse. We usually get a referral from the police or other supporting agencies, or even a self-referral when they've gone online and made a referral to the domestic abuse hub in the council, and they get allocated to an IDVA. They will then make contact with that victim and basically either go and visit them in person, or if they don't want that, they can actually speak to them on the phone. They'll ascertain what risks that client is under or potentially have, and then they can put necessary measures in place like target hardening, like ring doorbells, door window alarms, get the address tagged, all that kind of thing. If it's high risk, then obviously it'll get heard at MARAC, which is the minutes every 2 weeks here in Doncaster, where other support agencies, MARAC stands for Multi-Agent Risk Assessment Conference. So basically it's where all other partner agents involved, from social care, police, probation, drug and alcohol services, education, social welfare, all that kind of thing, so that they can be also asked what they know about the family, what they know about the perpetrator, what they know about the victim, so we can all be singing from the same song sheet as to be like embrace the victim, to see what support we can help them with, housing, struggling with money, struggling with food, all that kind of thing. And then what we do then is basically...
And how long is it between them reporting to getting that MARAC?
Sometimes it can be a matter of days, but sometimes it's usually about a week, because there's a cut-off period for each one. So it's usually within about 7 to 10 days that basically they'll be heard at MARAC. That'll be explained to them on the visit or on the call as to what that means and what that does, because some people talk about MARAC, they're like, what the hell's that? So, and because again, I think the good thing about MARAC is that obviously it makes other agents accountable. So if something gets raised and a task gets asked them to do, it gets reviewed at the next MARAC, and they ask that particular service, what have you done? You were given that task. If it's not been done, then the questions are asked, why not? But the key thing about
what happens to that victim in that time?
Well, basically, at the minute, obviously, if we identify a further risk, then obviously we can get other measures in place. And if things are struggling, then there are other avenues we can go down, like whether it be civil orders, that kind of thing, try and get that protection, and look at in terms of potential refuge, potential dispersed housing, alternative accommodation, all that kind of thing. So we always try and, as an IDVA service, we try and be the voice for the victim. Because ultimately some are scared or worried about contacting different organisations for fear of backlash, for fear of feeling they're doing something wrong. So we actively act as their voice for everybody. So if the police are not doing their job, I'll be on the back of the police saying, when the answer is bail, why have you not told my client that? Like social care, we'll have regular meetings with them. What's that? So if I think something's not right during a meeting, I will say it. I'll tell them that I don't agree with that, and I'll basically, and I think what I found is that the victims will basically, when they've got an IDVA involved, they feel a lot more reassured that things will get done. They've got that constant contact with that person, because with the minute you get that referral, you stay with them all the way through to the amount that goes to the court. So you support them at court, you help them at court, and above and beyond. And I think from my perspective is that I'm that sort of person that even if I've been to court, my phone's still always open. My door's always open. So I'm still people ringing me, a long time after the court's been finished, because they've got certain questions they want to ask, or they've got certain problems they're having, and I'll still be that voice for them, because you kind of build that rapport with them, that you are, that you're someone that they can trust. You're someone, if you say something, you do it. And that's kind of ethos I've had. If someone's asked me a question, if I don't know it, I'll find out who does, and I'll find out within the day, or certainly by the next day. So they're not left hanging on for that answer. And I think now I've moved into this field, having the experience of being in the police, I think that's helped me in terms of prepare victims for what comes ahead, because I know what's going to come ahead. I know what's going to happen, because I dealt with that side of it previously. So I can tell them that the court, this is what's going to happen at court, this is what's likely to happen. So it reassures them as well. So prior to a court date, I'll go and see them with the families, and I'll do a Q&A session with the family, because they've never been to court before. They'll be absolutely bricking it. I'm saying, right, what is your concerns? I can say, right, that won't happen, this will happen, and blah, blah, blah. And like my parents start asking, well, what about if this happens? Well, that won't happen because this will happen. So by the time I've done that session with them at home, by the time they get to court, yes, they're nervous because it's still court. But what I've found is that when they've actually got to court, yes, they've been scared, they've been shaking, but when they get into there and start giving evidence, they become so vocal, become so strong to tell their side of the story that when they get the defence barrister basically trying to say they were liars, they're shouting back at the defence like, I am not a liar, this is what happened. If you wasn't there, I was. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's such a, enlightening moment to see, that victim has gone through so much trauma, to have her say in court and actually tell the defence what actually happened, and try to and actually go back and say, try to ridicule what I've said and what I've done and what he did. I'm not having it, and that's what I'm saying. So it gives them that voice, and by having that, by with them being side by side with them throughout, it gives them that strength to do that. And I think it's an invaluable service. And I think from a police perspective, is police. I think once it's gone to court, they think we will take over. But again, there's certain things I haven't got access to certain systems within the police, so they still have to update the victim as to what's happening. And I think, having been from a police perspective, because years ago I was like an IDVA within the police, and that worked brilliant, because what would happen is that a perpetrator who was high risk got locked up and put in custody. I would then go out to see that victim with the IDVA from the council to give them a joint approach. So we could put things in place in terms of safeguarding, all that kind of thing. So by the time the perpetrator got released from custody or whatever, that victim's safe. She's nowhere to be seen, and she's at the equation. But like everything else in the police, what seems a good idea ends up getting dropped. So that's when I left, because I think at that point I didn't want to go out to response, so I transferred to North Yorkshire. And I set up things there.
Yeah, I think it is such a rewarding role, but it's also soul destroying at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you just so want the right outcomes for them, and you know that's not going to happen a lot of time.
No.
And I think that, like we are services, we pretty much do the same thing, but we offer that holistic support, that counselling, that EMDR, peer support. And if you've got that running alongside while they're going through it, navigating this system, they present so much differently than what they do without it.
Yeah.
Because they're a lot calmer, so they can give evidence better, they can rationalise things better. So by the time they do start hitting court arenas, it's usually a better outcome, because they're not sort of stood there, because they're labelled as being mentally ill, aren't they? Let's face it, the neurotic, the loonies, the mentally ill. And this is where we need that trauma-informed practice right across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
So that there's a better understanding of what trauma actually does. I mean, if you've got a soldier that's experienced CPTSD, you won't put him straight back into a battlefield, would you?
No, not at all.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They need to be able to heal and recover.
Yeah.
I mean, that the campaign that I set up regarding the proximity system, where I would hopefully like to think that we would see the reduction of refuge spaces, and that would be a massive thing, because ultimately victims have done absolutely nothing wrong, and they are uprooted from anything and everything when they've done nothing wrong. I mean, there's a lot of talk at minute around within the Vogue strategy that we're going to be holding perpetrators to account, but also rehabilitation. Now, I think for me, the rehabilitation thing could only work, I think, this is my opinion, if it's, I don't know how to put it, if it's mild coercive control and it's just not understood, and then of course for that for them to recognise that behaviour isn't right, it's not normal and it's not acceptable. In those cases, I would say it could probably work. But where it's the more extreme and it's those high risk, repeated crimes that are done by perpetrators, I don't think that there is any form of rehabilitation that's going to work with them.
I think personally, we need to go further back. I think you need to go into secondary schools and basically, because obviously that's when they start the fluctuations of early on relationships. There's these talks now in terms of sexual health and stuff like that, in terms of making sure they get pregnant and sexual disease and that kind of thing. We need to tag that in terms of a relationship as well, so that even the girls there and the men can identify themselves red flags, because at the minute they're not. So
well, they are. The thing is, they are going to do that. They've put in there that they're going to start holding boys accountable if they're being misogynistic. Now, I don't agree with that at all, because I think that could divide boys and girls even further, and I think they're going to end up with a worst case scenario. And let's face it, girls can be just as bad in some scenarios, and I don't think just tackling young boys, is enough.
No.
It has to be a zero tolerance approach, and they need to know that this behaviour isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there needs to be the consequences in place, and they need to know consequences for if they start behaving that way.
Yeah.
They're just doing talks at the minute about banning social media for under 16-year-olds. I'm not quite sure what I think about that or how they're going to manage that. They've just brought it in Australia.
It's like everything else, so they'll find another way to get to it. With that web or whatever. If anything, you're going to force things more. If it's open, it can be open and controlled to a certain degree. But if you complete ban it, as kids are nowadays, they have ways and means of bypassing that and actually can still get probably to the more severe content, which we're trying to get them to keep away from. It's okay banning it, but more needs to be done in terms of social media providers to try and put the date of birth in blocks put on straight away, so they can't look at that thing.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay having a ban. It's okay having a ban on 16-year-olds, but we all know 16-year-olds. If they're a bit quite cute and clever, they'll find a way around it. They'll find a way to get still access to social media by other systems, by other means, because they're a lot brighter than certainly by me anyway.
And me.
I'll still chalk and board me at the minute.
Listen, I don't think you can beat good old pen and paper.
Not at all. Because I remember when I used to start taking statements on the little phones. I was still I'm not doing that, because I didn't know how to do it for one. So I ended up doing still like hold pen and paper. And I went to this one job, and basically I'd done 3 statements by the time he'd done one on his phone. I was like, "That are you done yet?"
That's
he's
what I'd be like.
"You've done 3 statements." Yeah, I've done 3 statements. Right, I've had funny stuff yet. There they go.
You can't beat old school stuff. You can't.
Not at all.
Right, I'm on to my next question. So, from your time in the police force, what do you think the system gets most wrong when responding to domestic abuse cases?
I think, for me, is that you have an unbalance of level of experience from police officers, because I think most police officers now have got less than 5-year service, and if they're not given sufficient training and sufficient education about domestic abuse, things get missed. And I think certainly I find when I was working in the DA team, when we were getting jobs through in terms of dealing with prisoners, they were making crimes up that didn't exist in terms of could be like stalking, and because I remember once where I went to one job, it was basically an argument between sister and brother or partner, because her brother came over from Albania to stay, and we removed him, and there'd been no offence disclosed at that point, and then I came back from rest days to find out I had to crime 5 crimes, and one was like stalking. I went, how could he be stalking me? He lives in the same house as him. And this is in terms of it's the lack of understanding of what the legislation means, and to me that's what is pertinent throughout the police, is that they sit on a PowerPoint and they read, right, this is what stalking is, blah 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 blah, but ultimately they're not given any sort of time until the first thing they do is when they go out and they think, oh, that fits stalking, that, but they're not really coming to people like us in the DA team who can say, well, that's not stalking, mate, that's probably more something else. And I think because it was like the tag word or the tag offence, because we went through a phase like stalking, then it was control and coercive behaviour, and it belittles what the offences are in terms of if it's like everything else. If it is control and coercive behaviour, then let's deal with that control and coercive behaviour. But when you look at, in terms, you read the method of modus operandi of it, or the MO, you think that's not stalking, that's not bloody control and coercive behaviour. But the thing is, it's a lack of education from that point of understanding the legislation that's coming through. And I appreciate that there are different legislations coming through, especially now with the domestic abuse bill and stuff like that coming through the government now. But not enough time is given to the police to discuss this. Like, they're given an NCAL package to read, and they just watch it for a thing on the computer for like 40 minutes, and that's them educated. Then they need to have, you know, especially such a thing as serious
real
nature.
Life. They need experts by experience. Yeah. That's what they need.
Yeah.
Real life stuff. And do you know what? Because you'll be the same as me, you can see it unfolding. It's so transparent. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's another thing as well. The threshold for a conviction on coercive controlling behaviour is that high.
Yeah.
And the rates of conviction are so low.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're in a society that we're just saying, well, it's acceptable, really. You know, it can do that. That's okay. It can access your bank accounts. It can move your money about.
Yeah,
it can follow your text Y and Z. That's no problem. It can put cameras up in your house and follow your every move.
Yeah.
But what will he turn around and say? He will say it was to keep an eye on the dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then that's okay in that scenario. But then start putting all the other bits together and follow the pattern. And it's that they can't follow the pattern.
No.
And I think so. I don't know if you were aware a Culper app. So
yes.
There's a guy called Simon Frank. Did I tell you? I told you, didn't I, about it?
Yeah, I've been getting some clients to download it.
Yeah, first thing I do. That is the first thing I do. Tell them to download that straight away because it timelines everything. Yeah. It's amazing. Any form of evidence, get it shoved in there. And again, that saves resources on police officers because the evidence is there, the timeline's there.
Yeah.
They can't lose any paperwork, so they can't get out of that one. Yeah. And it's all there. That's another tool that could be used quite effectively.
Yeah, definitely.
The proximity system, another huge tool which will be coming in. Again, they don't need to evidence that it's been breached. That's it. You bang to rights. There is never ever any excuse or reason why perpetrators should go near their victims.
No. I think it's important as well that when we start bringing things, because for like in terms of any sort of new legislation brought in, it'll end up being a PowerPoint and NCAL package. So if this proximity thing comes in, it'll be an NCAL package that cops will have to watch and listen to. Well, hopefully it's not.
It will not. Listen, if I've got out to do with this, do you think it's going to end up being a PowerPoint? Really?
No, perhaps not.
Not a chance.
Not.
They're going to listen. They're going to listen to it because we want to be able to. We're going to create a training package for them.
All right.
So that they can. It'll be either watched online, it'll be recorded and filmed, or we'll do face to face and go in.
Because I did that.
Deborah Alderson.
I did that domestic abuse matters training a few years ago, and everyone in South Yorkshire Police had to do it. It was like compulsory; they had to do it. And I thought, brilliant. We've got a thing here now. It's going to be telling us what we're doing, where we're going, what we're doing wrong, and it mainly concentrated on control and coercive behaviour and stalking. And yes, okay, they are important subjects, but I expected it was going to be a talk about, right, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, and right, we need to improve this bit, and this is how we're going to do it, and it shows how we're going to improve as a service in dealing with domestic abuse victims. And at the end of the day, it was just an education package about stalking, control, and coercive behaviour. Showing a few videos, and yes, it was good. It was, don't get me wrong, it was an excellent bit of training, but I think because you were getting everybody from South Yorkshire Police on that training, I think it would be an ideal opportunity to say, right, we're currently here at this present time. We need to be here. We need to be able to get that. We need to do this, this, and this, and this is how we're going to do it. So at least then, every organisation, every officer in South Yorkshire Police would know what they're going to be doing, what they had to do. And I think they missed an ideal opportunity in which to get their case across or their project across in terms of that kind of thing. So that.
Do you know what? I've got a question for you. It's not on my sheet, but I'm going to ask you it.
Yeah.
So, do you know when you like when I take a victim to police station for interview?
Yeah.
And the officer has done, took some evidence and done a report, and then she's gone to the sergeant, and then they've said, yeah, no. Is that sergeant? Do they have a number where they can only pursue? Do you know what I mean? Because if there were evidence for every case that showed coercive control, there'd be hundreds, wouldn't there?
The thing is that basically, end of the day, like I used to act up as a sergeant in the DA team, so it was my job to see what evidential, if any evidence had met, for us to take that case to CPS that night, or if not, bail and pending further inquiries, or looking at alternative methods of disposal like a DVPN, or refer to inspire to change, or that kind of thing. But ultimately, if you've got a case and you've got a complainant on board, then it should be the CPS that make that decision, because even a situation where a person admits the incident and is eligible for a caution, like a conditional caution, that still has to go to CPS for them to make that final decision. And I'm finding at the minute, so whether or not they're going to CPS or not, but some sergeants to make that decision, it shouldn't be really them, because due to the fact it's domestic abuse, it's got its own sort of precedent. There are certain things we can authorise ourselves, like basically they're like brother and sister or family related, they're not intimate partners. Anything involving an intimate partner has to be realistically authorised by CPS as to what charging decision is made, if one is brought at all. I know that's certainly how it was when I was in. That basically anything involving intimate partners, even if in terms of it was like just a bit of damage, you still had to, and there went no comment or whatever. You still had to take it to CPS for a charging decision because of the seriousness of it. So. That's so. No matter what, it's not. There's no number. It's a case of if it's up to the police to gather that evidence. Okay, once they've completed all the evidence, they then send the CPS to make a charging decision. Very rarely will a sergeant make a decision because sometimes it's not deemed best practice. I'm not saying it don't happen, but I'm just saying best practice that CPS make a decision on all intimate offences.
What if all the evidence had gone to CPS for whatever reason, because it's not being deemed that it's sort of it needs to go in? So then what happens? Should they send all that evidence in to CPS?
Yeah. Well, what'll happen is that if it's not met the threshold, because basically what you have in the charging system in the police, you've got the threshold test and the full code test. The threshold test is basically where there's sufficient evidence in which to charge that person with an offence, whether it be one offence, two offences, but it meets that criteria. The full code test is before it gets to court. So he might be released on bail, charged with two offences, but it might be investigated for other offences. Or he might be released on bail for all the offences he's under investigation or he's been arrested for. And then CPS will then send inquiries back to the OIC saying, right, it mentioned in her statement that she got the CCTV at the fish shop. Right, can you go and do that? And you'll have an action plan from CPS with everything that's been done. So that basically by the time it goes to court, then everything that needs to be done has been done. So if the defence come out and say, well, I wasn't there on that day, well, I've got CCTV to prove that you were actually, and all that kind of, so that's how it kind of works. So even though CPS may not have enough evidence in which to charge, they will certainly then come back with an action plan to say, right, this needs to be done, and there'll be a certain cut-off date when that has to be done by, because certain offences have got certain timescales. So we have especially like common assault and stuff like that, which is a summary only offence. So. And then what happens then is that basically by the time they go to court, when the barrister's got the case in front of him, every line of inquiry has been done. So that if the defence come with any sort of like an alibi, we can say, well, we can shoot that out of the water because we've already done that inquiry. And likewise, the other thing that will come as well is that if a suspect goes or perpetrator goes no comment throughout interview, and then prior to getting to court, he or she will then provide a what called defence statement, and they will detail why they're not guilty of those offences they've been charged with. So again, that's another line of inquiry that the OIC will have to do to mitigate what they're trying to say at court. So the time it goes to court, everything is there to get conviction, because the CPS will not take it to court unless there's a realistic prospect of conviction at court. So a lot of the work's been put onto the OIC to be able to do that, and that's what I did methodically throughout my career. So to make sure everything was there, and sometimes think out a bit out of the box as well, because there was times where when I was in the job where we had no evidence, literally no body worn footage, she wasn't making a complaint, there was no visible injuries, police officers didn't see anything untoward, and the only thing I had was a 999 call. The 999 call I heard would make your back of your head stand upright, because it was very impactful. So I was trying to get this call minimised down so I could send it to CPS to about 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to make a decision. Couldn't get it down, so I ended up ringing up the CPS lawyer and said, look, can I play you this phone call down the phone and see what you think? And so I ended up ringing her up, played this 999 call. Within 3 minutes of reading it, she went, charge him. And that was all I needed. And it's a case of it's a case of looking at other things, and I knew that evidence would get me a charge because it was so impactful. But was it everything else we didn't have? And in the end, when he went to court, he pled guilty, because as soon as that played, he had no option to plead guilty. So it's again making sure the evidence is in place, so that by the time it gets to court, everything that needs to be done is done. So at least then they can't come out and try and get out of it. That's the thing.
Yeah. Right. Next question. How? You're enjoying this, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Right. Do you think police culture or structures make it difficult to fully protect victims of domestic abuse? If so, in what ways?
Police. I think the problem we've got now is police cultures is they're too scared to say anything against any particular ethnic background or anything like that. So when we know domestic abuse is happening, especially within the ethnic communities, like in terms of honour-based violence and that kind of thing, very rarely will try and tag it. Because for me, I used to be one of the specialists in honour-based violence when I was a few years ago, and I think things are happening in terms that when you've got an honour-based violence job, you couldn't record it as that for one. Because it raised the profile of it. It had to become down say as would be a common assault. The crime then had to be cloaked or screened, so no one else apart from you or your supervisor could read it. And any sort of incoming contact had to be either come through to me or through to the sergeant, so at least then it minimised the thing. That don't happen now, but from what I can see. They put honour-based violence all over the reports. Because it all stems from years ago. There was an Asian victim in Birmingham who was trying to leave her husband, and his sister or relative worked in the control room at Westminster Police, and she heard about this, so she gave him the heads up, and it put her life in extreme danger. Luckily, nothing happened. So it was as a result of that they tried to make it, really compact and really confidential. I don't see that happening now. I don't know why that's changed, but it's too much to do. I think it's a lack of, because certainly when I joined the police, I actually spent a week with a Muslim family. So I actually spent time, Monday to Friday, 8 till 5, with that family doing everything that they did. So they went to mosque or whatever. And you got to understand the ramifications of different cultures, different beliefs. And I think the police are not, yes, we've got diversity to a certain degree within the police, but ultimately there's an ignorance sometimes in terms of they tend to react rather than actually look as to the underlying reason. And I think the problem we've got now is we have a lot of younger people joining the police, and there isn't that experienced mindset when dealing with communities, whether it be travellers, whether it be obviously the Pakistani community, the Indian communities, Albanian, Romanian, and it's a case of again, that's something that we pick up, but certainly dealing with people who are not got no access to recourse to public funds. The struggle we get to try and get them accommodation because they've got no funds. And luckily, there's people like ASEAN and that kind of thing that help us with that. But I think, to me, again, it all boils down to the education of things. There's not. Give an example is that when I was in my training part, they had to do a thesis on anti-terrorism. This was like the first 10 weeks in training. I'm like, really? Do they need to know that? Because that's such a specialist subject. Why are we not talking about the domestic? Why not talk about different communities? What in terms of like what things happen within communities that might deem domestic abuse, but just other communities might not seem to be domestic abuse. Like in terms of like FGM, the forced genital mutilation. That's another thing that raises. We just take we get.
How often do you come up against that? How often
I
do you
never
come
did.
across that?
I never did in 30 years in Doncaster.
I've never.
I know.
I've never.
I know that I've got a mate of mine in Leicester, and yes, it's quite rife down there. But I think it's a case of again, it's all about the education of things. But I think from my point of view is that we spend too much time talking about training or listening to nonsense when we should be really dealing with the things that really matter. And like say by looking at different communities, because they if you're trying to give an understanding as to what's happening, so when they come to you, if you came to you as a cop, that you'd understand. Because I remember when I done a race violence job once years ago, and the two girls come to the front desk at College Road at Doncaster, and one was a cousin and one was the actual victim, and the cousin was like giving all the loud and all that, but I knew the victim was her. So we went into the side room to the office. She always said to me at the end of it, she goes, "How did you know it was me?" I said, "Because you were quiet. Your cousin was all the mouthy one, but you were the quiet, and I knew you were the victim." And that worked out. Cause it's again engaging because at that time she was still living with the husband. She wanted to divorce, and it was a brother that had made threats to kill her for disgracing the family. So I checked in with her once a week. She'd come to the Mary Wallet Centre in Donny, and I'd see her for about half an hour, see how things were. I've been in contact with her since that time. In terms of she's now basically works as a solicitor and helps people from her book community dealing with that kind of thing. And I always remember saying to her, because I always did Happy New Year just the other day at the beginning of the year, and I always remember she said to me, "You were the shining light in my otherwise dark world, because I could actually trust you. I can know you if you want me to do it, you do it." And that really was like really made me happy that just by understanding her culture, that she knew that she could talk to me about it quite openly, and I know without really feeling shocked or not having an understanding of what she was telling me. And that's what I mean. That's what we're in this job for, because no matter what background they come from, it's so important. And you also look at the police culture as well, because prior to leaving the police, I was a major in terms of involved in the cop on cop domestic abuse, in terms of becoming like an IDVA for them. It was launched by Leanne Herschel, who's now DI now, and we basically there's about 12 of us from across the force from different departments who could be called upon at any time to go and speak to victims of domestic abuse, whether they be a cop, member of staff from the police, or a wife that's a husband or partner as a cop or a member of staff. So PS professional standards are involved. So it's also having that, breaking those barriers between, because we know domestic abuse happens across every faction of the society. Having that sort of, so it got to a point where I think a good friend of mine, it was the inspector in North Yorkshire. They just started their operation in terms of their protocols for reporting domestic abuse within the police from police staff. So I borrowed her ethos, as it were, for us to set it up down in South Yorkshire. So, and it's good to see that it's now starting to become a regular thing across the board in terms of UK forces, because it was something that was never ever talked about. It was a case of they just had to sit and brunt it, and a lot of them were quite embarrassed because the cops, that they're victims of domestic abuse, but it happens to anybody. And that's what I love about it. The fact is that it's a common line, it's a common brain for everybody. And you could be a judge, you could be a solicitor, you could be a barrister. We can become a perpetrator or a victim of domestic abuse.
Yeah. So, based on both roles, what changes do you believe are most urgently needed to improve how domestic abuse victims are treated by the justice system?
I think first and foremost, they have to be believed. I think for me, education is a big thing within the police. We need to get. I think that should, in terms of syllabus, that should take a full week. in terms of where they talk about each day. They talk about different the main forms of offences that get carried out by perpetrators: the control and coercive behaviour, the stalking, the assaults. That they're quite in terms of they're easy to deal with, but it's the control and coercive behaviour. And I always remember when they first start bringing that out, I tried to charge someone with control and coercive abuse and I didn't get it. So I actually went to spoke to a solicitor or barrister at court and says, "Tell me what I need to do to get this over the line." And he says, "Right, this is what you need to do. You do this, do this, do this, do this. And if you follow that protocol throughout, then your chances of you getting a successful conviction at court will increase considerably." And the key thing they told me about control and coercive behaviour is, if it was just word on word, it's very difficult to prove, unless you've got other forms of evidence like the bank statements or that kind of thing. But if you've got someone else who's witnessed it, whether it be a member of the family, how they've changed in terms of not seen them for years or whatever because they used to see them every day, you've got a third party then. Even though they're part of the family, but they're in some degree they're independent, so they can actually back up what she's saying. So consequently, her chances of being believed in court is strengthened significantly because you've got someone witnessing how she's been over that period of time. And I took that with me. So every time now I did that, I applied that to every job I had involving control and coercive behaviour. And I'm glad to say that I got charged and convicted each time. So because it is such a hard offence to prove, and you'll see that and it's a case of knowing what you need to where you need to focus your evidence on. And it's okay then providing a detailed statement of what's happened in terms of how they've controlled them, but it's a case of backing that up. So if you said that you controlled his money, you can go to the bank statements and look at the bank statements. You can see the withdrawals have been made or whatever. But also, more importantly, you could speak to friends and family who've not seen. When was the last time you seen him? Well, about 3 months ago. She normally comes out with every Friday night a statement from that. So you kind of like fits like a jigsaw. You fit in the little jigsaw pieces, which kind of backs up what she's saying in her original statement. And so at least then it's not a case of just her voice against his. There's many voices against him. So it kind of makes it more easy to prove. So, but yeah, so things like that.
But the conviction rate's still quite really low, though, isn't it?
Because it's purely because it's a lack of understanding of what it means. Because I think the thing is, like say, when you look at it in terms of when they get charged with it, and you look at the evidence, because you see what evidence is there, and I think the problem, people don't tend to look outside the box to try and prove an offence. Obviously, if it's not in front of them, it's not there. So sometimes you have to work out outside the parameters to try and prove that offence. And like I say, it's a unique offence, and that's why I think they need to be taught what to look for. So when they go, that's what helped me. So when I was going to any control community case, I'd have a set format in terms of, right, I've got this, right, tick, 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 tick. I can then evidence that and then basically put it in my statement, into my evidence, and then I get a conviction at court because I've got the evidence that's needed. And I think the reason why there's such a low rate is because there's one, it's lack of understanding of what the offence means, what evidence you need to prove the offence, and secondly, in terms of having the time, having the enthusiasm to do it. Because sometimes, because it's such a long, drawn-out offence, it's not simple like an assault where you can see what you've got with CCTV, you've got injuries, he's got a bruise to his bum, he bangs to rights. Control and coercive behaviour, because I've got one at the minute, it's the last at the minute, and she had 10 years worth of it. And when I first met her, she was completely lost. She was so controlled by him that she couldn't do anything without his knowledge, without him knowing. And she was crying at the drop of a hat. She see triggers in the house, she'd cry. On the fridge, she'd cry.
Yeah.
And she's now basically, because I've been seeing her every week, basically going to see once a week. And so I've been that rock for her, that person she can trust. She's now moved on. She's now started a new relationship, and she now knows the red flags. She's done the Claire's Law disclosure on this new partner. So she's educated herself, but I think from the way she was at the beginning, she was a complete wreck. She had kids, young kids as well, and he was trying to use them against her as well, trying to control her that way. But she's identifying that now. She's identifying those traits, so she can react upon it. And she now is a much stronger person than she was because she's kind of understands what she went through. And I think if we were to get someone who've been through that to the police and say, look, this is what he did to me, and this is what a controlled coercive behaviour looks like. Perhaps when they go to a job and they can ask these questions that make it relevant, so they can start going through the process and actually applying that knowledge, applying that evidence, and get the convictions up. To me, it's a lack of understanding of what the legislation means. A lot of people think it's terms of control. He's controlling because he tells you what to wear. Right? That's great. Okay, but have you got someone who's witnessed that? And that's the key thing in terms of trying to prove at court, because ultimately, sometimes you can get it though, because ultimately if he's been known to lie at court and his character's not good, it all boils down to the witness of the character of the witness. So the victims, in terms of there's no previous history, is a credible witness, they'll believe her. But what would be better to have that and someone else who was also believable? So you have two people against one. You stacked in your favour to get the conviction then. And I think it's such a long, all I can describe, it's such a laborious and intense in terms of investigation that it's like a murder investigation. It really is, because you go into the depth into these little bit of things to try and prove her version of events. Even if it's just a one-off comment that someone's witnessed, you can put that down to, and it kind of just then builds her credibility as a witness in court. To make sure that she knows what she was saying is true.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need, because it is like a lot of common sense, a lot of time that needs to go into investigating it properly.
Yeah.
But definitely the education side of stuff. I mean, there was so much with mine that we never really looked at, and at the time I was being, why aren't you pressing charges? Why aren't you pressing charges? And I was just an absolute wreck. There were no way I were alcohol dependent by that point. There were no way I was strong enough to face that. He threatened to kill me practically every day of his marriage. So I was just absolutely petrified, and I'd got it in my head that he was going to murder me.
I think the problem we have is that we're so heavily reliant on the victim to give evidence when we should be looking at other avenues to try and support that evidence, so that if we rather than put the pressure on her or him, this is it's only your evidence that can get us through it. If she knows or he knows that they've got other people there backing her, it makes her have that voice. And so the important thing for me is that they have that voice, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I can speak to a victim. And the way she's talking, I know straight away that's control and coercive behaviour, because I prompt certain questions to her that identifies those certain things, and I think, you're controlled. And that, when you speak to her about it, and they're like, really? Yeah, you are. I didn't realise that, and that's why it turns out when they go into the freedom program and stuff like that and learn more about that.
Yeah.
And they learn red flags, and it's good to see when you see a person moving on, but also ultimately she's taking control of her own life and saying, right, I'm going to see this. I'm seeing this fella. All right, first thing I'm going to do is Claire's law, and that that's automatic. And then she's identified. Right, she's now, because she's got that thing on TikTok. She's now encouraging other women to look for those same red flags. So it's like a continual
snowball. Yeah, and this is why it's important for me to keep doing these podcasts, to keep speaking out, and we've got to be the voice of the voiceless, because they're not, a lot of time they're not strong and brave enough to do it themselves at that moment.
No.
But it's about empowering them enough that they have got that courage and rebuild the self-esteem and find who they are again, if they ever knew they were in first place a lot of time.
Yeah.
And recognising, like you said, when those red flags are there, and Claire's law, sometimes they're quick at receiving them, sometimes they're not so quick. No. It makes it sound fantastic that everybody and anybody can apply for a Claire's law, and you'll get to find out if your partner's X, Y, and Z. But it doesn't actually quite work like that, does it?
No.
No,
because I remember that. I remember that.
My new partner, with my new partner, I wanted his full enhanced DBS check. Which I've got.
All right, brilliant.
Because he works in care anyway, so he's already got one. So
right, okay. You got proof of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been so lovely catching up with you again.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Thank you for spending this time to sort of broadcast your experiences, and hopefully I always think like this: if you can get one or even a handful of people to listen to your views and your professional advice and your lived experience, then anything's worth doing something, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think for me as well is that now I've been working in the council for over a year now. I'm getting other agencies in terms of social care asking me for opinions and kind of help. What do you think? And stuff like that. So re-educating them. So which I love.
Yeah, we get NHS referring into us because they don't know how to deal with trauma.
Yeah.
So they'll refer victims into us. And same, with social care and stuff. I must admit, though, some social workers can be a bit of a nightmare to work with.
Yeah.
Just because I actually asked a social worker if she was trauma informed, and her answer was, "I'm an advanced social worker." I said to her, "I didn't ask you that."
No.
And it's that attitude some of them have because they're not trauma informed.
Yeah.
They've got absolutely zero patience.
Yeah.
Their attitudes most of the time, not all of them, there's some bloody good ones.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it goes back to like what we said, the difference that having a good professional work alongside you navigating this system, oh my God, the outcome is like so different, isn't it?
Yeah.
From having a bad professional that ain't got a clue what they're bloody doing or talking about, and they've got attitudes on them that absolutely stink.
Yeah.
Even down to employers, if they've got good employers, that makes a huge difference. When they need time off for court hearings, they need time off for GP appointments.
Yeah.
Together, we all have to come together to do this, and I do believe that we can smash this shit show that's in place at minute.
Yeah.
It's completely doable.
Yeah.
It's completely doable.
Yeah.
But again, it's that sort of education and accountability, and not just on perpetrators, also on the professionals that are involved.
Yeah. Because I'd be quite happy to do training in terms of, because I want to move into that side of the field now, to be honest, because as I say, I'm getting all I can from the Advocate service here because I'm like putting myself through various courses and stuff like that. But I've often said that I'd like to go into this police training and say, look, and do like a complete week package on domestic abuse. Get people in terms of guest speakers, in terms of actually people. I know people that I know who actually quite gladly come into the police station or into the training environment and say, this is what happened to me. This is what you should be looking out for, because at least then you're getting a realism. Then instead of like reading it in a pamphlet or reading it on a PowerPoint, you're actually getting real victims to say, when I first met this guy, he was brilliant, this, that, and then he did this and he did that. They can start picturing their own mind. And so if they do go to a job, they can remember that conversation they had with that guest speaker, so they can actually make the best informed decision that they need to make. Because the minute it
has more of an impact. It has more of an impact if it's real life stuff and somebody stood in front of you.
Yeah.
They're a lot less likely to forget, aren't they?
Definitely.
If they've got somebody stood in front of them that it's actually happened to.
Yeah.
We should have a chat about that. We'll have to meet up.
Definitely.
And we'll discuss that, because I've got some ideas bouncing about for that one.
Have you? Yeah, I look forward to it.
Well, I've got ADHD, and so I'm like, you know what I'm like? I'm 100 miles an hour with everything. Like, right, this needs doing, that one's changing. But yeah, my trustees just like need headache tablets every time they speak to me because they can't keep up.
Bless you. Oh, yeah. Brilliant.
Right then, my lovely. I will catch up with you soon.
All right, Deb. So you take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.